Welcome to the Learning and Development Channel, where you can learn, lead, and make a difference.
So good day po sa lahat. Welcome to this video. Second video. Our first video is on the training workshop on strengthening lesson planning competencies using the ILAW template with the integration of the hot solo framework, the climate change adaptation mechanism, peace building, and DepEd core values, culture sensitivity, 21st century skills. So if you have watched the video, kindly click the link above. This session, we will have the step-by-step guide in designing an ILAW lesson plan with full integration of the hot solo, the CCOM, the peace building, and DepEd core values, cultural sensitivity, and the 21st century skills. So let's start our discussion. So in designing an ILAW lesson plan, we start with the ILAW mindset. So before writing anything, before filling in the template, remember that the ILAW lesson planning is not paperwork. It is a learning design that integrates or shows alignment between the intentions, the learning experience, the assessment, and the ways forward. So when we do integration, the integration is embedded in the activities, particularly in the learning experience. So before writing anything, we are to ask ourselves, what meaningful learning experience do I want my learners to have today? Of course, we are to fill in the header. So the first part of the ILAW lesson plan is the lesson title, the learning area, the grade level, the number of sessions, the references, and the declaration of AI use. So what to do? We write a learner-friendly lesson title. We use references aligned with the revised K-10 curriculum and the budget of work that is given in the three-term alignment with the three-term calendar, and declare the use of AI. Then second is on the intentions. So we are to define the clear learning targets. So the learning competency and the curriculum standards. We must copy the exact competency in the budget of work and in the content and the performance standards. Based on our previous discussion, indigenization may be applied in the content and the performance standards. So ILAW, the word ILAW starts with clear learning intentions that are aligned to the curriculum standards and are aligned to the learner's needs. So we can also integrate the hot solo framework in the learning objectives. When we do the unpacking of the competencies, we can also use the solo framework structural observed learning outcomes, wherein when we unpack, we also use the solo level in making learning objectives. So for example, for unistructural, we can use the following verbs, skills: identify, name, recognize, that is one relevant data. Multistructural, describe, less explain parts. Read the learner will give two or more relevant data. under relational level, the following objectives are an example. Explain relationships. Explain how parts work together. Then under extended abstract, apply learning to new situations or propose solutions. So that's an example of when a teacher is unpacking competencies using the Hatsulu framework. So step 1, we're to break down the target competency. So before mapping out your lessons, we are to isolate the main parts from the competency statement found in the curriculum guide in the budget of work. So we're going to highlight the verbs. So the specific actions the student must do, and underline the nouns, the specific topics or content that they must learn. So for example, in the competency, identify from pictures and diagrams the parts of the circulatory system as heart, blood, and blood vessels, and describe how they work. From the competency, the following verbs are given, identify, describe how they work. So these are the skills. Then we have the nouns. The content are the circulatory system, heart, blood vessels, pictures, and diagrams. And we have also the learning condition. The learning condition is using from pictures and diagrams. So this is the learning condition. So they're going to identify, describe how they work. Under using pictures and diagrams, the learning condition. So let's take a look about the structure of the learning competencies. So a learning competency has 3 structures. We have the observable skill, the content, and the learning condition. So the observable skills, this is the skills requirement for the behavior that the learners must demonstrate. So this is what should learners be able to do. So pag sinabing observable skill, it should be what the learners should be able to do, not what the teachers will be able to do. It's on the part of the learners. Example, know competency of identify and describe. So those are observable skills. On the content, it refers to the knowledge requirement or the subject matter, the concept or topic that the learner will work on. So this explains what knowledge or concept is being learned. So our example is circulatory system, addition, etc. Then we have the learning condition. So the learning condition specifies the context, the tools or situation in which the learning will occur. So the learning condition specifies the circumstances. Under what conditions, under what circumstances will the learning be demonstrated? Example of learning condition is using a graphic organizer, using a model, using measuring instrument. And in our example, it's using pictures and diagrams. So let's take, for example, this learning competency and let us identify the different structures of this learning competency. Describe the changes of state for solids, liquids, and gases. Smelting, evaporation, freezing, condensation, using diagrams and flow charts. So in this learning competency, the observable skills are described. The content is states for solids, liquid, and gases. Melting, evaporation, freezing, condensation. The learning condition is diagrams and using diagrams and flowcharts. That's the structure of this learning competency. Let's have another example. Describe useful everyday examples of uniform and non-uniform mixtures such as solutions and suspensions. What are the observable skills? You have described. What are the content? You have the uniform mixtures, non-uniform mixtures. What is the learning condition? Using everyday examples of mixtures. That's the learning condition. Another example of the learning competency. Under structure, we have, for example, explain why physical changes are reversible and chemical changes are irreversible. So the observable skill is explain what is the content, physical and chemical change, the learning condition. And in this example, there is no learning condition. This is explicit. So we have here, we're showing here the revised Bloom's taxonomy, the different verbs that follows the remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So these are the verbs under the revised Bloom's taxonomy. And then we will connect it with the solo taxonomy. The unistructural in the solo taxonomy is aligned with remember, that is lots lower order thinking skills. The multistructural is the same level with understand. It's also a lower order thinking skills. The apply and analyze is the same level with the relational under the solo taxonomy. So this is where the higher order thinking skills are, including extended abstract, which is the same level with evaluate and create. So when we are to make our learning objectives, we can also use by determining our target mastery solo level. So based on the competencies, we can use, for example, level 1, unistructural, and level 2, multistructural. So the competency only asks the students to name, list, or memorize facts. So because the unistructural and multistructural level are at the same level with remember and understand, so that's only surface learning. Level 3 relational, the competency asks the students to compare, to connect, to sequence or describe how parts work together. And level 4 is the extended abstract. The competency requires the students to hypothesize, predict, or apply principles to a completely new situation. So we're going to determine our target mastery level, which is actually our HUTs, that's relational and extended abstract. However, we cannot go to HUTs if we will not start with the LUTs. So if the learning competency for example, the learning competency in the budget of work falls under applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. We're to break down the learning competency into smaller or discrete some skills or knowledge component. So we are to unpack to create a learning objectives. So how do we create a learning Okay, what to remember when we formulate learning objectives? Number 1, focus on the observable skills. So the learning objective should describe what learners can do. What learners can do, not just what they know. Second, align it with the Bloom's taxonomy. Ensure that the objective reflects the intended level of thinking from lots to lots. Number 3, be specific and clear. Use precise language to avoid ambiguity. 4, include the content and the condition. So we're going to state what is to be learned, the content, and under what situation it will be demonstrated. That's the condition. Ensure measurability. Objectives should be accessible through appropriate task or assessment. Measurable. So here be your situational guide for crafting learning objectives. Situation number 1. The competency is higher order thinking skills, HOTS. But the scope of the topic is specific. What are we going to do? So, if the competency is HOTS, we are to identify the prerequisite skills needed. We're going to break down the competency into lower level learning objectives to scaffold learning. Okay? Identify the prerequisite skills. Situation 2. The competency is lower order thinking skills, but the topic is too broad or wide. So what will be our action? We are also to identify the prerequisite knowledge. Prerequisite knowledge. Because the topic, the content is too broad, we are to craft learning objective that has more specific scope. Okay. Situation number 3. The competency demands higher order thinking skills and covers a wide scope, making it too complex for learners. What is our action? We are to identify both the prerequisite knowledge, that's the content, and skills. The doable, what the learners can do, and what the learners should know. We're going to break the competency into smaller, more specific objectives. We start with the lower level skills, then gradually progress towards higher order thinking skills. Let's have some example. So, our learning competency is explain why physical changes are reversible and chemical changes are reversible. The observable skill is explain. The content is physical change and chemical change. The learning condition is explicit. So the explain is under in the cognitive level, the Bloom's taxonomy or revised Bloom's taxonomy. Explain is under understanding. So when we do learning objectives, we should have learning objectives from remembering and to understanding. Under remembering, we are to list down the common characteristics of each type of chains based on observations. Under understanding, we're to explain why physical chains are reversible and chemical changes are irreversible using a table. Another example of a learning competency: demonstrate through guided investigation the advantages and limitations of simple machines such as inclined planes, widgets, levers, and pulleys. The observable skill is demonstrate. The content is advantages and limitations of simple machines, inclined planes, widgets, levers, and pulleys. The learning condition is guided investigation. So in the cognitive level, the observable skill is under applying. Demonstrate is under applying. So when we make our learning objectives, we create learning objectives from remembering, understanding to applying. So we have, for remembering, identify the different types of simple machines: inclined plane, wedges, lever, and pulley. Understanding, explain the advantages and limitations of each type of simple machine. Under applying, demonstrate how simple machines work through guided investigation activities. So this is a moving palm. Start with the left. Identify, remembering, which is the solo taxonomy, that is a unistructural. Understanding, explain the advantages and limitations, that is multistructural. And applying demonstrates how machines work, that can be under relational. So we're looking at the comparison again between Bloom's and the solo taxonomy. So we're in pre-structural is below the remembering. Unistructural is same level with remember. Multistructural, same level with understand. Relational is on same level with apply and analyze. And the standard abstract is in same level with evaluate and create. So when unpacking, for example, we are unpacking and applying competency using the solo. We keep these rules in mind. For example, yung competency, yung learning competency niya is nandun sa applying siya, which is in the solo level, that is under relational. So if the competency is under the relational level, that is our target benchmark. Ibig sabihin, every student, based on that learning competency, every student must achieve that level to pass the minimum requirement of the competency. When we are developing HATs, we would like that our learners should go beyond relational level. We want them to have a standard up level of answers. So the extended abstract level serves as our HATs enrichment. So it ensures that we do not limit, we do not cap our students' potential, because there are learners who are advanced. So the extended abstract level will allow our advanced learners to show mastery by transferring their practical application skills to real-world problem solving. So when we are unpacking the learning competencies only under applying, which is in the solo taxonomy, that's relational level. So every learner should achieve that level of competence. But we can also have an extended abstract learning objectives as a enrichment to allow our advanced learner to show their mastery. We do not limit our students by merely achieving the minimum requirement. So, as our guide, it will help develop our advanced learners yung extended abstract level ng learning objectives. So, ito yung example na learning objective formulation na workshop wherein nahanap ng learning competency from the budget of work. I identify yung observable skills, yung content, and yung learning condition. And based on the identified observable skills, ay gagawa ng mga learning objectives, yung mga na-unpack. Then let's go to the next part, which is on the learner context. So what are we going to do on the learner context? So we are going to write in the learner context the reality of the community. Is the community where the school is located an urban, a rural area, a coastal area, a flood-prone area? What is the strength of your learners? Are they good in broadcasting? Are they good in dancing interest? Are they good in making arts? So, what's the strength and what's the needs? What are the access? What are the resources? And what are the prior experiences of your learners? So, this is where we write our the context of the learners. So it is based on the instructional design framework. It is part of our lesson should be contextualized and inclusive, should be culture sensitive and community based. And in the climate change adaptation mechanism, during the learner's context, we can identify what are the local Wisconsin realities of the community where the learners they belong. So if the section of the part of the ILAW lesson plan is strong, and lesson natin becomes naturally inclusive, then we have the learning experience. After the intentions, we have the learning experience. This is where we design the journey. So this is the heart of the journey of the learning, teaching, and learning process. So most of the integration of HATS, the climate change, the TS education, the 21st century skills, core values are integrated. Most of it are integrated in the learning experience. In designing the learning experience, we are to select teaching approaches, teaching strategies, and teaching techniques that is congruent to the learning area. So during the training of the revised K-10 curriculum, every learning area, there is a preferred teaching approach per learning area. Constructivist, for example, so When designing the learning experience, as teachers, we can use our creativity in integrating and embedding the concepts of climate change, adaptation mechanism, the peace building, the DepEd core values, and the 21st century skills, and the hot solo by providing open-ended questions. So that depends on the creativity of the teacher whenever it is applicable. The learning experience. The parts of the learning experience may vary depending on the approach, the teaching approach that the teacher would apply on the learning area. So based on RA 10533, our curriculum suggests that we use these pedagogical approaches. Constructiveness, learners construct their own knowledge. Inquiry-based, they ask their own questions. Reflective, they reflect. They soliloquize, reflect on directions, reflect on what they learn. Collaborative, they work in groups. Integrative, we connect one subject area to other subject areas, should be integrated. So in the learning experience, we have the pre-lesson. So this is where the readiness and well-being check is happening. So there is a quick physical, emotional, or cognitive readiness activity and determine review of the previous learning. And then the teacher will state the lesson goals in the learner's language. So it can be trans-language from the local learner's language, the language 1, then into language 2, second language, which is either Filipino or English. So in this free lesson, we are applying the learning design principle, which is scaffolding. It is connecting the current lesson with the previous lesson and checking their emotional readiness. Okay, very quick. Then the second is the flow of the lesson. So the flow of the lesson is the activities. So again, the flow of the lesson depends on the approach. In this example, we will be using the 4 E's, and we are embedding the 4 C's, instructional aspects, instructional principles. We start with engage. The 4 learning spirits. So engage, the purpose of engage is to capture the interest and activate prior knowledge. So on engage, we use real life and local situations to capture the interest and activate the prior knowledge of learners. We can use the names of personalities of the locality. So we also use the learner's feelings and experience. So we are embedding here the context, the empathize, and we can integrate culture sensitive sharing, values reflections, and oral checks for understanding under engage. Second, we have the explore. Second part of the flow is explore, where the learners investigate and delve understanding. We'll link the past and the present lessons. Learners can group can work in group or pair. During the Explore, we can utilize the hot solo framework, peace building by having a respectful discussion during their group work, during their as investigation. Then experience. The purpose is to deepen their understanding through application. We can have role-playing activities, simulations, models, and cross-disciplinary, meaning we'll link their understanding in one learning area to other learning area. So at this point, we are developing their relational understanding. We can also apply lessons to disaster, to hate, help, or safety context, depending on the content of the lesson. Whenever applicable, we can embed, integrate climate change adaptation. Then we have empathize. The purpose is to develop their values, transfer knowledge to real-world application. So during the empathize phase, we are embedding innovative thinking. Then the extended abstract. You can integrate in this phase, peace building, that is helping others. DepEd core values, makabansa, makakalikasan, and community-based actions. Those are the flow. Then we have the learning resources. In the learning resources, we plan for inclusion and emergency. So we are going to list the primary materials we use for the learning, the visuals and alternatives, the backup plans in case of power outage or limited supplies. So, as emphasized in an instructional design framework, our learning should be inclusive. So, sa learning design principle naman, sinabi, kailangan merong inclusion. So, we're applying it in the learning resources. Then, opportunities for integration. Another part of the ILAW lesson plan under the learning experience is the opportunities for integration. So we must be intentional here. We write the learning areas that can be integrated based on the topic. And what are those topics? So in this part, we are encouraging integrative lesson planning, of course, since there are in the case stage 2 and case stage 3, we have departmentalized teaching. So teachers at different learning areas can collaborate. But actually in the new DepEd policies, there are examples of topics and assessments. Performance tasks that can be graded, that can be collaborated between the two learning areas. So one performance task or one product task can be graded under one learning area, another can be graded also in another learning area. So that's where we encourage the opportunities for integration. Then you have the assessment, the evidence of learning. So on the new DepEd policies on lesson planning, and we have also on the grading system, of course, formative assessment is always emphasized, and they are non-graded. So they are conducted throughout the lesson. And formative assessment, by using the structured of learning outcomes, the SOLO framework, we can identify based on the responses of our learners if they are already at the lots and tasks. So we align our assessments with the learning objectives, with the solo level, with the different activities. So we can do oral questioning, growth output, observation, checklist. So these are examples of formative assessment. We have summative assessment of summative test. We have summative test 1. So to summative test 2, and then we have term examinations. Of course, we design a task that matches the objectives. There are a number of items, 40, the minimum. We include the high-order thinking questions, high-order thinking skills questions, and allows varied responses or inclusive. Of course, we encourage during the summative assessment where learners can do extended abstract reasoning, and it can be also in product task where they can create products, innovate, create, and do tasks aligned to the learning objectives of the lesson. Then for the ways forward, this is learning beyond the classroom. So these are extended learning opportunities that a teacher can give, which the learner can do at the home base, community base, choice base. So the learner has the autonomy. So these are extended learning opportunities where the extended abstract level can also be given in this part of the lesson. And as an with enrichment activities for learners for advance, and also as a form of remediation activities for those learners who are not meeting the minimum standards. And we encourage here the 21st century skills at yung pagiging mahabansa at mahatao. Then the last part of the ILAW lesson plan template is the reflection, which is where the teachers practice reflective or metacognition. So in this part, the teacher should ask the following questions. What worked during the lesson? What are the adjustments that are needed? And what support do they need that they lack? So the learning design principle here is teacher reflection. Teachers will reflect based on their activities, do perform better. Next time when they present the same topic in another set of learners. Of course, after you designed your entire lesson plan, we have the ILAW rubrics, so we can check our lesson plan using the ILAW rubric before submission to our school head, before submission to the district, or before submission to the master teachers for further technical assistance. We can check our lesson plan using the ILAW rubric. We check the alignment with the learning objectives, the learning experience, and to the assessments. Check for the alignment of the intentions, the learning experience, the assessment, and the ways forward. Of course, you can revise also, and in which part of the lesson we can integrate. We can do some embedding on the 21st century, on the CCOM, the peace building, and the DepEd core values. So we are presenting here a sample lesson using the ILAW template. So for example, we have The lesson title, the circulatory system, the parts and how they work. The learning area is science, the name of teacher, the grade level, the number of sessions, there are 4 sessions, 45 minutes per session. What are the references? You have the curriculum guide, the budget of work, the DepEd Learning Resource Portal, the learner's prior health experiences in the community, and the declaration of BIUs. Based on the DepEd Order Number 3 Series of 2026. Okay, then we have the intentions. So we have here the learning competency and the curriculum standards, where we provide the competency based on the budget of work. What is the content standard based on the budget of work and the performance standards? And based on the competencies and these learning competencies, we provide learning objectives that are under or remembering or unistructural, under understanding or multi-structural, under applying and understanding, which is relational, and also extended abstract, which is on creating. Propose ways, for example, to protect Mr. Garth's system during extreme weather conditions and the learning context. So, example of learner context, the learners came from the inner barangay of the municipality with first-hand experience and hot weather typhoon evacuation. They have high engagement and hands-on activities and group work, but require visual aids and guided explanations for scientific processes. And some learners need language scaffolds and peer support. Then in learning experience, we have pre-lesson. This will help the learners get ready for the lesson. Example is the short breathing exercise. Review the previous topic. State the lesson objectives in the learner-friendly terms. Then for the flow, we start with engage. We show pictures of children playing, running, and resting during hot weather and floods. Then they ask them, what do you feel when your heart beats fast? Why is drinking water important during hot days? So during this time, they bring parents, the learner, to share short personal experiences. And pair share activities. They can talk with a partner to answer this question for answering in a group. That's the engage. For the exploration, we can provide the learners with labeled and unlabeled diagrams of the circulatory system. Or we group the learners based on their ability. They work in groups to label diagrams. They locate the heart, the blood, and the blood vessels and list their functions. First, there's integration here of solo, 30% sensory skills, peace building, and cultural sensitivity. Then under experience, the teacher will guide the learners in a blood flow simulation, where one learner will be acting as a heart, the others will act as blood vessels, and others will act as blood cells, and the strings will act as blood vessels. So the learner activity, they will act out how the blood moves, oxygen, and nutrients, and they will explain how the parts work together. Then under empathize, the learners will create poster or a pledge answering how can we protect our heart and help others to stay healthy during extreme weather. So we have here the integrations of the DepEd core values, makakalikasan, makabansa, peace building, we help others during disasters, culture sensitive, incorporate the local practices such as making herbal drinks and community care. Then under learning resources, we write down the needed learning resources, the charts, the diagrams, of the circular system on the paper marker strings, printed visuals for inclusive learning, backup of chalkboard drawings in case of power disruptions. Opportunities for integration. These learning competency can be integrated also in the health. Notice personal wellness habits and the GMRC values and empathy. In climate change of disaster preparedness in TLE visual aids and diagrams whenever they are available based on the context of the community. Then we have the formative assessment. We have oral questioning, diagram labeling, observation checklist. Then summative assessment to label the circular system, describe their functions, short written explanation of how parts work together, and reflective questions on they will suggest one way to keep the system healthy during storm weather. Put the ways forward. Enrichment for our advanced learners. They can create a health journal on heart healthy habits, or they can interview a barangay health worker for the mediation. We have simplified diagram tracing of the circulatory system and a guided peer tutoring. Then for the learners, reflection or metacognition, we have the short, yet unpaid short paragraph. Today I learned that my heart is blank and I will take care of it by. So that's metacognition for the learners. Then for the reflections of the teacher, these are the questions that will guide where the learners highly engaged in the activities. What adjustments will I do to carry the lesson on time? Do I need to explore additional visuals for struggling readers? So that ends our discussion. So I think we are ready to drop a lesson plan using the ILAW template with integration of the following concepts: the hot solo, the SECOM, peace building, and DepEd core values, culture sensitivity, and the 21st century skills. So if you have questions about, you can just write your comment in this video and we will try to answer. So please click subscribe to our channel to know more about educational updates. Thank you for watching and mabuhay po. Paalam.
Like and subscribe to the L&D channel on YouTube using the link youtube.com/@learn2lead channel.